Hey guys, Gerry here in the lab today. In the last video we were talking about quadrature rotary encoders and how they were used to perform motion tracking for the dinosaur input device apparatus. That was the little armature puppet that they used to animate CGI dinosaurs in the movie Jurassic Park. So the stop motion animators could move this little puppet around, and a whole bunch of these rotary encoders were then sending digital data into the computers, which were read and then would allow the puppeteers to maneuver this little, armature puppet on a table, and the CGI characters in the computer, all the dinosaurs, would then mimic and follow the movements of the little puppet. And so if you're interested in checking that video out, the link is above and it's also in the description. Now, a lot of you were messaging me and you were saying, hey, Jer, I thought that quadrature rotary encoders or quadrature encoders were used in robotics. And you're right. What I've got here, this is a Pitman 9400 series DC 12 volt motor that was commonly used in the 80s and 90s in robotics. And as you can see here over behind me, this is a Scorbot ER4PC educational robot, commonly used in high schools and colleges during the 90s to teach students about robotics and just give them exposure to programming and robotics in general. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about and looking at the quadrature encoders used with these Pitman motors. So that's today's video. Let's just dive in. Here we go. This one here is the GM94113C540, and that's got a 65.5 to 1 ratio, 12 volt DC motor from 1982. Wild. The ones on this robot are from 91. And the Scorbot series, again, was a very common educational robot throughout the 90s. A lot of high schools had them, colleges. And they had different types. This was the ER4PC. They had the ER2, 3, 4, 5, and the 7, and then the 9. The 7 and 9 models were more commonly used in colleges just because they were a little more advanced, a lot larger. But they were this model here, the ER4PC and 5, were used with milling machines. And so students could design and build, different CNC designs and cut them out in wax. And sometimes metal, they allowed them to cut in aluminum. But these robotic systems were used in conjunction with CNC projects. So a brief little show here. That's one of the motors being activated here. Now we're going to be looking at the signals coming from each of these motors that has a rotary encoder right here on the back end. There's an extended shaft, and that's where the quadrature rotary encoder is mounted. And there's a custom-made assembly that all of the Pitman motors were equipped with, and that was custom-made by Scorbot. Intelitech, that was the company. So they operate almost exactly the same way as the quadrature rotary encoders that we looked at. These were the Borns. However, just doing some extra research, I discovered that the Borns quadrature rotary encoders that we were looking at with the dinosaur input device in the last video, they have a regulated output signal for the channel A and channel B sensors. So it generates a very, very clean square wave for each of those optical sensors. Now, in comparison, the Pitman motors for the Scorbot, they used a generic off-the-shelf Fairchild brand photoelectric switch. And so these were mounted on the back end. And so now the signals coming from this Fairchild photoelectric switch, it has to be conditioned. And so the Borns quadrature rotary encoders, they were self-regulating, and they have some electronics in here that regulates that signal for you, generating a very, very clean square wave on the outputs. Now for the Pitman motors, we're going to have to run that through a buffer circuit to just clean up the signals a little bit. We're going to be looking at some of the signals coming off of the photoelectric switches, and we'll compare them to the signals coming from the Bourne's Quadrature Rotary Encoder. So let's hop over to my oscilloscope and we're going to look at some of those signals. And so here's our PLDT2 Altera development board. This was the board that I used to build the Quadrature Rotary Encoder decoder circuit within the Altera CPLD, and that was featured in my last video on the dinosaur input device apparatus used in the film Jurassic Park. But in today's video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be monitoring both of the encoders from the Quadrature encoder, the Bourne's encoder on the breadboard here, as well as the Quadrature encoder on the Pitman motor from the Scorbot. And we have assigned one digit. The first digit on the 7-segment display is for the Quadrature rotary encoder, the Bourne's one that's on the breadboard. And then the second is for the Pitman motor. And so we can monitor those signals here on the breadboard, and you can see how they'll increment as we activate them. So now what I've got here is I've got my oscilloscope probes right here, and both of the channel A and channel B sensors are being tracked there, and we're going to go and look at that on the oscilloscope as we rotate, and you'll be able to see the signals coming from this encoder. And you'll just see how clean they are because they are self-regulated and they produce just a very, very clean square wave signal right out of the encoder. Really, really cool. And so as I rotate it here, and so if I just keep turning it back and forth, you can see the signals on the oscilloscope here and how that relates. So the frequency is changing depending. If I start turning it really, really rapidly, you can see how the frequency increases. And the phase difference there between channel A and channel B. And that's essentially how the Quadrature rotary encoder operates. There's a slight phase shift between channel A and channel B. And then as you rotate it slowly, you can see how the frequency changes. So now that's what's really amazing about these Bourne's encoders. They generate a very, very clean output signal on channel A and channel B. Just a perfect square wave that doesn't require any additional conditioning. And so now with the Scorbot here, if we activate the motor for the wrist here and move it in a downward motion, you can see every time the motor is activated, performing a rotation of the shaft there, the rotary encoder creates those square waves. Now it's a little hard for the scope to track these just because they're not as clean as the ones coming from the Bourne's encoder, but the CPLD is still able to track these square waves. And you can see also sort of, again, the tracking is a bit off here because of the little bit of the noise coming in. But you can see how they're slightly out of phase. And that's the nature of the Quadrature rotary encoder. And there, as you can see, the counter is slowly counting up as we just slowly increment the motion of that axis on the robot. So the circuit is counting those square waves that have been regulated by the 74HCT14 buffer chip, the inverter. And that's required for the Pitman motor Quadrature rotary encoders in order to regulate that signal. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is the types of encoders that you can get. Now, there's two types specifically. The Bourne's rotary encoders that we used with the dinosaur input device featured in the last video. All of the encoders on that unit are incremental encoders, and that's the same as the encoders that are used here on the Scorbot robot. Now, when using incremental encoders, there's no way of knowing the angle of rotation that the encoder is at power up, because there's no point of reference. So in turn, incremental encoders require a homing sequence or a reset sequence. This is essentially where you designate or choose the 0 degree point on your rotary encoder. Essentially what that means is that you need an external digital circuit or a microcontroller or a computer in order to track the logic pulses and essentially count all of the pulses that are generated by that encoder. And so when it's turning in a clockwise motion, the counters will count up into the positive. And then when the rotary encoder is turned counterclockwise, it will count down into the negative. And so in order to do that, you have to have a homing position or a reset sequence. And that's where usually what happens is the motors or all of the different encoders that are being used in a system, whether it's a robot arm or the dinosaur input device, they would have to position all of the encoders to a certain spot and anchor it to that location. And that would be the same exact location that all of the joints and all of the motors would have to be positioned at the beginning before they start performing any kind of tracking or motion tracking. And they call that the homing sequence. And so usually it's like for a robot, they call it the home position. And so usually what happens is that you position the robot in a specific location, and then it will reset all of the counters to 0. So then any movements after that point are being tracked properly. And so with the robot, in order to automate this, what they do is they place little limit switches at different spots on the joints. So you position the robot as close as you can to one position, and then the robot will go through what they call a homing sequence, and that's where it'll move each joint very, in a positive, negative direction, looking for that limit switch. And it'll move it back and forth until it actually engages and activates the limit switch, and then it knows, okay, this is the position where we want to reset all of our counters to 0. And that is part of the homing sequence. And that's pretty much a standard requirement when you're dealing with incremental encoders. Now, the other type of encoder is the absolute encoder. That is a very unique digital sensor that provides a digitally unique address at power up. And so in turn, it does not require a homing sequence. So every time you turn it on, it knows exactly where it is in that 360 degree rotation. Because of this, usually absolute encoders are a little more expensive than incremental encoders, but they provide that additional capability based on the application that you're designing, whether it's robotics or any other type of motion control. And so that's the difference between an absolute encoder and an incremental encoder. Now, I've had this Scorbot for years. I had it up and running when I first got it. I spent a good amount of time fixing it up and getting it going. And I retrofitted it to work with a controller that was designed for the ER7 robot. It's a much larger robot. And it's that controller is the Controller A model. And so it's a little bit overkill for this robot because it has much higher current capabilities for the larger ER7 robot, but it still functions fine, and it performs the motion control just fine with these Quadrature encoders, and is able to drive the robot with no issues at all. So that's one thing that I want to do, is to get it all fixed up again and interface it to the controller and demo that for you guys here on my channel. It's been sitting in limbo for a long time. One of the Pitman motor gearboxes had some issues, and I had a couple of broken gears, ordered some parts arrived, and then it just sort of got shelved and left. and I didn't work on it for a long time. And as you can see, it's developed quite a bit of dust over that time period, just sitting in the shop there at the back. And so it's due for a very thorough cleaning. But again, one thing I want to do is to get it up and running again, and put together some demos for you guys, and demonstrate this robot up and running again, and do some cool programming projects to demo its capabilities. A really, really cool robot from the 90s, and I know that you guys will get a kick out of that once I get it up and running again. Oh. Oh man, I can't get enough of that. I'm always playing with the robots. It's just so much fun. So that's a wrap, everybody. We got to check out the rotary encoders. These are the incremental types of encoders that are used, and those are the ones that we were looking at in today's video with the Scorbot, and as well the same type were used in the dinosaur input device, and that was the Bourne's Quadrature rotary encoders. So really cool. There's different types. Like I said, there's the absolute encoders that are also used in robotics, and depending on the application, that's the type of encoder that you want to use if you don't want to have to deal with any kind of homing sequence. And it's very accurate. But again, they are a little more expensive. But still super cool. We got to check out encoders here with the Scorbot ER4PC. And this is, again, a robot that I want to get up and running fully and be able to demo it here on my channel for you guys and show you guys some of the programming projects and the different things and applications that we can get this robot to do. Super fun. It's super cool. And I'll be anxious to dive into that in the coming videos. So that is a wrap, everybody. I want to remind everybody of my merch page. For those of you, if you want to get yourself a capacitor tumbler or a capacitor mug. So just a reminder, if you guys want to visit my merch page, QR code for you right here. And I've got hats, I've got t-shirts, I've got a whole bunch of different products there for you guys to check out. And it's just a great way for you guys to help support the channel and the content that I'm making here, and allows me to continue doing that. So the support is really appreciated, and you get some cool merch out of it. All right, everybody, that's today's video. Please hit the like and subscribe if you can. It's always appreciated, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Take it easy, and bye for now. Ciao.